May I request Professor Chandrakant Puri to introduce Advocate Prakash Ambedkar ji.
Good evening, friends. It's a pleasure to be here among all of you today, and we are very lucky to have Mr. Prakash Ambedkar as chairperson of this very interesting lecture today. I think Mr. Prakash Ambedkar requires no introduction, but still, being a formality, I am here to introduce you. Mr. Prakash Ambedkar is a national leader of Bharatiya Republican Paksha, Bahujan Mahasangh. He is the grandson of Bharat Ratna Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He has twice represented the Lok Sabha constituency of Akola in Maharashtra state, and he has served in both houses of the parliament. In true sense, I think Bala Sahib, as we fondly call him, is carrying out the legacy of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And it's a very nice feeling for me personally that today lecture of an eminent speaker and Bala Sahib is chairing this particular lecture today. We are very happy as organizers to host this lecture and also to have Bala Sahib.
Every one of us must thank Irfan for inviting us for their effort on the issue which is troubling the nation at the present stage. And all of a sudden we find that Dr. Ambedkar has come on the center stage when democracy is under attack. And I have many incidents which I would not like to quote that anybody getting into any trouble, social or either other way around, he thinks of Dr. Ambedkar. And there I think so lies the final solution of it. When you speak of democracy, I think so we have to think of the Indian society also as very well articulated by Christopher that you don't have a homogeneous society. Not even the caste is an homogeneous society. Even within the caste you have the caste. Further down then if you go to see, each caste is a nation. Because it has its history, it has its caste systems, it has its laws, it has its own culture. And even to think in terms of revolution, I doubt whether he would have thought of revolution at any stage of his time. But interaction was the only way I think so he meant it when he said that this is going to be a form of change. And it is through that I think so he developed his own theology on democracy when he said that it's a method of government where revolutionary changes can be brought about. Indian society no doubt needed a revolutionary changes, but at the same time let me say that he used the caste very well to change the society. Today we are against the caste panchayat, but during his time he used the caste panchayat to change the caste itself. Today the caste is being changed in a different way. And the caste panchayat has been working on a different angle. I think so we should not judge the caste panchayat as they are functioning today as they were functioning, you can say, about 50 years ago. During those last 50 years, I think so there was a awakening among the masses that we have to come together. And building a bond was one of the most important things. And therefore when he defined nation, he said, what we have today is a fellow feeling for a person who is within my own teeth and kin. And there is anti-fellow feeling for those who are not within my teeth and kin. So he said, unless and until we get over this feeling, or in other words what he said, if we do not broaden this feelings of fellowship, he said we are not going to have anything in this country. And I think so he emphasized on personal liberty, individual liberty, with the sole object that this individual liberty was always subjected to caste liberty. And therefore, if the caste liberty has to be getting ridden off, the personal liberty has to be picked up. So in that way, it's a contradiction, let me say so, that he speaks of a social life, togetherness, and at the same time he speaks of an individual liberty. These are two contradictory terms, I know, and these are two contradictory views also. But he had to merge looking into the caste structure as to what he had faced and come out with a theory how to build a nation. It's basically what he called it Indian society as a heterogeneous mass. And within this heterogeneous mass, what are the points of convergence? So broadly he brought about that convergence can be a form of government. This is one convergence which he said. Second, he said taking democracy to the grassroots level. And that is where he coined the word social democracy. The third, he said that people are oppressed even economically. And if this economic class who is being oppressed, if he has to feel a fellow feeling or if he has to feel something for the government, he came out with a theory where he defined economy in three different senses. One he said is the essential industry, then he came out with the necessary industry, and then he came out with the auxiliary industry. He said essential industry is basically linked to the life of a nation. Necessary industry, he said, is linked to the life of all beings, where he has equal means to all the necessities in life, and that should be the property of the government at what, and actually research is open to all corporate sector. So I think so there are many factors which he looked into it as to how to build a nation. It's no doubt that he converted himself from being a class leader, a caste leader you can say, to a general leader. At one point of time, he speaks of reservation for a particular class. But when he becomes the chairman of the drafting committee, he said carrying out reservation in the class in which I was propagating is basically anti-national. Having a self-assessment of his own demand, I think so that was one of his biggest qualities, that he knew what the nation demands and he knew what society demands. So when it came to the question of compromise or leaving out what was not in the interest of the nation, he just bluntly left it out and said in the Constituent Assembly that I don't need a separate electorate, but I need a reserved seats for this class of people. And therefore, later on he came out with a theory which we find in Article 60, where he said that every nation over a period of time is going to have a people who feel who will be left out. And to envisage the feeling that they are not left out, the government has to come forward and to say that we are going to look forward. And that is where he formulated Article 60 in saying that reservation in education and service is going to be the permanent feature of the Constitution. And then he further said that those who are enjoying reservation, whether they will be permanent, I can't say now. It is for the government of that day to decide whether they still continue or they should be left out. That's what I think so he made it. Today I may say so, what we are facing today is a two section of the Hindu society. One is the Vedic Hindu, which is challenging the democratic principles of the society. Because Vedikism is contrary to democracy. Vedikism is contrary to brotherhood. Vedikism is contradictory to liberty. And Vedikism is contradictory to individual thought of a person. Why we are surviving, if you call me and ask me, I would simply say, is that you have the other fold of the Hindus, which is the saintly fold. The followers of the saintly fold. And if you see these saints who have built a society which is contradictory to the Vedic society, they built it in a form of a commune system, as we may call it. And that commune system still continues in smaller forms. Their views, those continue in a smaller form. Only what we need is to articulate those forms in a better way. Let me put it another way. We are talking of dowries. But the saints had a different kind of dowries. And there was one article, I think so, which was there in the last week in Times of India, where one of the tribes still continue that if you want to marry with a girl, the boy has to pay the bride for marrying the girl. To keeping the society intact, I may say so. Some of the principles were never discussed in the whole sociological theology which we went on for the last 60 years. We only spoke of things which were detrimental to the society. We never spoke of things which help the saint to maintain the commune life of a system. And I think so what is necessary today is to speak of a commune life of a society which we are going to keep together. This is a passing phase, and you say so, but a dangerous passing phase, and you say so. In the sense that those who did not accept democracy, principles of democracy, principle of liberty, principle of freedom, and principle of brotherhood, they are bent upon breaking up this system. That is true. And they will use all means. As we say today, we are ourselves, I think so, should be very clear as to what we mean by the rulers of this country. Are we to consider the rulers as the owners of the country, or are we to consider the rulers as a representative of the country? We are not able to make a final distinction that sovereignty and what is being used today as anti-nationals do not go hand in hand. A sovereign is a sovereign. I am a part of a sovereign. And in a sovereign you have a right to dissent. A person who dissents cannot be called as anti-national. And when it speaks terms that we are going to be called an anti-national and we ourselves fear, I think so our fear psychosis is one of the worst enemy of us. The more we get out of this fear psychosis, I think so, we'll have a society, we'll have a ruling class, or we'll have the governing class as we call it, more responsible and more, as I may say so, what Christopher was trying to say, that Dr. Ambedkar's view on religion, and basically Buddhism, he spoke of a system. And he said people behave, if the system is good, they behave good. If the system is bad, they behave badly. And how do you build up a system? You build up a system on your moral character, you build up your system on your intellectual thought process, whatever you have, or a view of your life. And he said this view, what was existing in the Vedic religion, is not going to survive the nation, is not going to build up a nation, is not going to create a nation. And if you have to build up a nation, you must have something what is called as brotherhood, what is called as fellow feeling, and that is the necessity of VR. And therefore he said that this is my second beginning of my life after conversion. He said this is my new beginning. And therefore I think so all of us who are thinking in terms that democracy should remain, and what Christopher said, that we have to remain united, I think so. That's the only answer I may say so to save democracy. Thank you.